So you have a payment in your Xero and you are not quite sure what to do with it. It's a customer, they've paid you more than you expected, or they've paid you out the blue and you don't have an invoice to match it to, and you're like, what do I do with it now? You might be vaguely aware that there's the option in Xero to record prepayments or overpayments, but you think to yourself, what the heck is the difference between those two? How do I know which one is the right one to apply? And you're probably worried that you're picking the wrong one, and that by doing that, you're going to make a mess of your books and possibly even make a mess of your next tax bill. And let me tell you, you are not alone. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk through exactly how to tell the difference so that you can keep your Xero accounts crystal clear without spending hours Googling accounting jargon or Googling how to deal with this thing. Okay, and here's the thing. I see business owners do this all the time. They click the first option that they see in Xero, thinking that it's just a payment right and that they will fix it in the future. But overpayments and prepayments and direct payments are not the same thing, and choosing the wrong one may cause issues or all sorts of headaches down the line, and I want to help you to avoid that. So let's begin by just high level talking about what is an overpayment versus what is a prepayment. Like, when should you use them? Generally speaking, an overpayment should be used when you get too much too soon. So it's when there's an existing invoice and a customer just paid you too much or too soon, and so there's already an invoice in the system. Compare that to a prepayment. This is when you get money in or out, because this applies on both the customer side and the invoice side, this terminology. So where there's money in or out before an invoice exists, then do it as a prepayment. So that's quick definition. Overpayment, too much too soon, but there's already like an invoice that it could be linked to. Prepayment is money in or out before there's an invoice. That's my way that I recommend for dealing with this. So let's walk through an example and just kind of extrapolate out these definitions. So an overpayment is when someone, a customer or you, so that someone could be your customer if money is coming in, or if you're paying money out, it could be you. So it's when someone pays more than they should have for a particular bill or invoice. So as an example would be if you've sent a customer an invoice for £100 and they pay you £120 by mistake. That extra £20 needs to be recorded as an overpayment in Xero. And you would link the £100 to an existing invoice, and the remaining £20 you would create as an overpayment. That £20 overpayment then sits there until you either decide to refund in cash or you put it against a future invoice that comes in. Okay, so that's an overpayment, and I'm going to show you on the screen shortly. A prepayment, this is when payment happens before there's even an invoice or a bill to match it to. So an example is where a customer sends you a £500 deposit before you send them an invoice, or perhaps you pay a supplier in advance before they bill you, which is quite common if you are trying to stick to a certain credit limit on your account. You might have to make payments in advance of receiving the bills. Okay, now in Xero, what you should do with these is record them as prepayments, because there's nothing to match it to in Xero. And it's like parking your money until that invoice arrives. And when that invoice arrives, you then match it up. Now, if what I've explained to you so far is making Xero feel a lot less scary, then hit that like button and subscribe for more easy Xero tips like this one so that you can feel in control. And if you really want to stop wasting hours second guessing yourself when it comes to Xero, my best tip is still coming, and I'm going to share that with you on the screen, so stick around. Here we are in our demo company in Xero with the bank reconciliation screen, and let's run through an example where a customer has paid you. So here's a good example: Jacaranda maple syrup. That is hilarious. Maple syrup, my brain. Okay, Jacaranda Maple Systems has paid a deposit of £2,000. Now, based on what I've told you so far, a deposit should be recorded as a prepayment, okay? Because typically it's where you're receiving money in advance of there being an invoice in the system. So what can you do with this? Well, what you can do is hit this Add Details button here, and the screen will pop out. And what you can then do is see next to this received as box here, you can hit this drop down. There we go. Third time lucky. And you'll see there's 3 options here. Now, my recommendation for Xero is generally avoid using direct payments. It just doesn't show up because it's not going to show up on your sales invoices screen, and it's going to make it really difficult to manage. So you want to choose between prepayments and overpayments. And in this instance, because it's money received in advance, I suggest you to use it as a prepayment, okay, because it's essentially prepaid. Okay, you then must make sure that you select the correct and relevant contact here, because that is going to mean that Xero knows what contact that relates to, and when the actual invoice comes in with that same contact, you can then match it up. If you select slightly different names or anything, it's not going to be able to match those 2 up. You can then change this description as you would like, and then you can record it to the relevant account. Now, if you know that VAT should be applied on this deposit because it's getting be paid for in advance of work being done, then you'll select the sales account and VAT will be applied. If it's a deposit that will be refunded in future, or you've identified that there's a reason that VAT should not be applied, whatever that may be, then what you could do is you could create a deposit account in your chart of accounts in Xero, and that would be a current liability and there would be no VAT, and you would then select that current liability account. I don't know if one's going to come up here because I didn't create one in advance. So let's just use the suspense account as an example, and you would have no VAT applied. So you can then choose whether you want VAT to apply or not, but don't just choose off of your own guesstimation. Make sure that you've got the proper VAT advice, and depending on your specific scenario, you correctly apply or don't apply VAT on this deposit or this prepayment, okay? But the key here is select that it's a prepayment because it's money received in advance. You hit that save transaction button at the bottom here, and you hit OK. And now when you go to your invoices in Xero, and you go to this awaiting payment screen, you will see that PP, prepayment from Jacaranda Maple Systems for £2,000, okay? And when an invoice actually comes in from Jacaranda Maple Systems, you will then be able to allocate that to the invoice. So if I open up this Jacaranda one as an example, it's taking a moment, but once it loads, if you click on this drop-down menu, you will see that your only option is to edit, because we do not have an invoice in the system from Jacaranda Maple Systems that we can match it to. But if we take the example I've been mucking about here in the demo company of City Limousines, here's a prepayment from City Limousines of $1,500. There are other invoices in the system from City Limousines. You can see one of them down here at the bottom. So when I go into that City Limousines prepayment, because there's an invoice that I can match it to, when I select on this prepayment options drop-down menu, it then comes with the option to allocate the credits. And I can then allocate part of that prepayment of $1,500 against the invoice in the system of $250, and I say allocate. That prepayment will then have a remaining balance of $1,250, and if you click into that actual invoice, you'll see that the invoice is then fully marked as paid. There's nothing remaining. Okay. And overpayment, the process of assigning overpayment is exactly the same. You come here to the top of the overpayment or prepayment, and if there's an invoice that can be matched to, you can say allocate. You also have the option on any invoices with that customer, if there is a credit, to allocate whether it's a credit note, an overpayment, or a prepayment. It will be down here as an option to allocate the credit on the invoice. You can either match the prepayment to the invoice or the invoice to the prepayment. Same with overpayments and credit notes. Okay. So that's how you do prepayments. Overpayments are going to be very similar. So say a customer pays you more than they should have. So here's this $450. Let's find and match. And let's say that £450 that we received related to this invoice that was due to us from Port and Phillip Freight. I know the name doesn't match up, but I'm just using it as an example. So actually they should have paid us $250, but they paid us $450. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that the extra £200 was a mistake, an overpayment that they made. So what we do is we come down here and we come to new transaction, and we're going to say receive money, and we're going to say this was in fact an overpayment of 200, you can see Xero autofills it. You are welcome to change the figure if you want. We say save transaction. And so that £450 received is going to be reconciled against the invoice for 250 and the overpayment of 200. So we can hit reconcile. Okay. And that's how you can then create an overpayment. And if you come to your invoices screen now, you will see here, there's the Majestic Contracting OP overpayments of 200. And when you can then decide what you want to do with that overpayment. You might decide that you're going to refund it to the customer, or you might decide that you want to allocate it to an invoice when you next invoice Majestic Contracting. Okay, something to be aware of: if you decide that you want to refund it to the customer, you do need to come here and basically say as much at the bottom of that overpayment. The reason being is because Xero doesn't know what you're going to do with that overpayment. So let's say you decide to refund Majestic Contracting, and so you give them that £200. You physically transfer the money in your bank. You then go to your bank and you're like, okay, I have the overpayment in the system. I have the £200 leaving my bank account, and I now want to reconcile it. So you come to the final match, and guess what? You cannot find that overpayment to assign it to. And you're probably thinking, oh, Xero's frustrating, or Ray gave me incorrect information. What do I do? And no, that's not the case. Overpayments and prepayments require that you let Xero know what you're going to do with it, because you could either assign it to an invoice or you could do a cash refund. If you decide to do a cash refund, you need to locate that overpayment from the invoices screen and put down here that you've decided to do a refund, from what bank account you've decided to do it, and hit this add refund button. And then what will happen is when you come to reconcile bank, it will appear as an option that you can reconcile it against. Okay. So that's everything you need to know with overpayments and prepayments from a high level, and hopefully that has helped you to clear up any confusion that you've had around overpayments versus prepayments, how to do it, when it should be done. So a quick recap. Overpayment means extra money on an existing invoice or bill, where prepayments mean payment before an invoice exists. Get this right and your books will stay tidy, your VAT will be correct, and your accountant will love you for it, because there won't be any year-end mess to tidy up. Now, if you want to go from unsure to Xero hero, as I always say, without drowning in accounting jargon or accounting speak, check out my other videos right here in this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.